So we have Anne Liebgott, and she is the founder and managing director at AW Switzerland, and she will present her informative views on international investment diversification made in Switzerland. Anne is a Swiss, Canadian, and Danish national, and she is the founder and managing director of the award-winning Swiss online platform, AW Switzerland. And AWS introduces Swiss asset managers that have registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States and are dedicated to providing Swiss wealth management services to US and Canadian citizens, residents, and expats. The platform includes other wealth management related services as well, in addition, and provides North American orientated marketing, communication, and business development strategies through her agency, Americom in Switzerland. And it's a pleasure to have you join us. I have to ask, is that a very good Zoom background you have, or is this an
This is actually, let's call it my home office view on the island of Mallorca.
You are living your best.
I just came back from a long, typical Spanish lunch.
Amazing, well deserved, I'm sure.
Yeah. You know, I'm heading back to Switzerland on Friday, and in Switzerland I also have an excellent view. I'll have to show you that the next time. But this is my vista here in Mallorca.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, just to introduce myself, my name is Anne Liebgott. I am founder and I run the internet platform, award-winning, like you mentioned. It's at americanswelcome.swiss. Basically, it's a platform that builds a bridge between US and Canadian investors who want to hold a portion of their assets in Switzerland. And it's not always an easy task to find out who to contact, who to get in touch with, which wealth manager should I use, and so on and so forth. And this platform provides exactly that. It provides exactly that bridge between the two. And it's like I said, easy to access, 24/7, no sign-in requirements, no sponsorships, no Google ads, no anything. So if you visit the platform, you don't get bombarded by any kind of creepy Google ads and stuff like that. It's just really a useful tool, a useful resource for Americans and Canadians that would like to get established in Switzerland. So the next question has also been, what kind of investments are very popular in Switzerland these days? Well, okay, I've just rolled back a little bit. Switzerland has been recognized as the most resilient country in the world to handle the aftermath of the pandemia and so on. And now we have other issues that have come to, in addition to that. Inflation, for example, where in Europe today, I read a line that it said that a European inflation is at 8.2%. In Switzerland, we have basically 2.2% inflation. In some areas, maybe 4%, like in gasoline and so on. But you know, inflation in Switzerland is not really an issue. So if you're, for example, wanting to preserve the value of your investments, the value of your currencies and so on, the Swiss franc, once again, proves to be a stable value. And I mean, I know this is a deep tech platform and I'm not so deep tech myself, but this platform is a online way to find out how to get established in Switzerland. Now, of course, we have Crypto Valley, that's in Zug, in Switzerland, for example. And even though there's been in crypto, it's still going strong. The Swiss government, or the Swiss, better said, the Swiss financial authorities have already departed their legislation on cryptocurrencies and fintech and all these kind of things. So we're in a very, very safe ground as far as that's concerned. And then again, Switzerland has always been has always been a resort for, let's say, wealth preservation. When crisis comes in the world, no matter what, no matter where, it can be a world war, it can be something else, it can be pandemania, it can be something else, and so on. Switzerland has really been the place to be for cross-border private wealth management. And that has many reasons. Of course, the stability of Switzerland is, economic and political stability is a main reason. Neutrality, even though now with the war with Ukraine, Switzerland has, I don't want to say compromise on their neutrality, because the neutrality always means we do not take up armed war against another country. And in this case, Switzerland did decide to adopt the worldwide sanctions against Russians for this invasion of Ukraine. But its neutrality, in the sense of that it does not provide weapons, it does not send troops, it does not engage in warfare with another sovereignty in times of war, that remains. And on the other hand, we also have just the professionalism of the Swiss financial center. And that, I mean, like I said, there wouldn't be a reason why it's not from Fitch, AAA rated with a strong outlook. Switzerland is always, again, mentioned as a leading jurisdiction for private Swiss wealth management. And yeah, the clients that are invested in Switzerland are generally very happy with the services, especially for Americans, which my platform deals with. Actually, it deals with Americans wanting to invest, or North Americans wanting to invest in Switzerland. After the tax evasion issues, would go back like to 2008 and so on, where Switzerland was actually became world famous, not just for their numbered accounts, but for their capability of helping US persons to, let's just call it, strongly optimize their tax relations by constructing various structuring using other jurisdictions like the Cayman Islands and so forth and so on, to kind of protect their assets from any kind of taxation. Now, that blew up in the face of UBS at the time. They were the initiator of the whole thing. But since then, and this goes more than 10 years ago, since then, Switzerland has adopted a strict white money policy. And the Swiss wealth managers that are registered with the SEC in the United States and are able to provide their services to US clients, they do not accept any funds that are not officially declared. So that's just one thing. On the other hand, a Swiss SEC registered investment advisor has an international perspective. That's their upbringing, that's their education. So they do not hesitate to say, come on, let's diversify a portfolio internationally to take advantage of this market and that market, this investment and that investment, and so on. They're not bound by working with Charles Schwab or another bank that wants to sell their so-called globally diversified portfolios. In Switzerland, you actually get the real thing. It is truly globally diversified in the sense that you yourself hold these shares of these companies and so forth. So that being said, this idea of investing in Switzerland is not just for Americans, and it's not just for Canadians either. It's basically for members, around the world. And we do see a lot of investing coming from Asia or from the Middle East or from Eastern Europe, Russia still is actually an interesting client base, but of course in Switzerland now with the sanctions on, the Russians are kind of like persona non grata. Everything is on hold and they'll just keep it that way for the time being. So why would you invest in Switzerland other than the economic and political stability, and other than maybe the special expertise that Swiss wealth managers have? Well, of course, you have the Swiss franc, which is the currency in times of crisis. It's historically the world's strongest currency. So if you're talking about inflation woes, the Swiss franc can be very helpful in hedging inflation woes that you might have, like, for example, in the United States. And sometimes when you think of global mobility, if you hold assets outside of your home country, and let's say you need to access assets outside of your home country, even if it's just by credit card, or you want to get some cash, or you want to do some investing, or whatever the case may be, holding assets outside of your own jurisdiction enables you to do that. So just let's say, I'll give an example for Canada. Canada, during the pandemania, the Prime Minister Trudeau was upset with the Canadian truckers demonstrating against having to deal with these COVID regulations. And so he decided to freeze their accounts, just like that. No warning given, and their accounts were frozen. Now, that might be for a trucker in Canada, not such a big deal, but just think how it can happen to anybody at any time. And if you have some assets in Switzerland, then you can always access them, no matter what happens in your home country. You can have, your retirement pension funds can be annexed and they can be shut down. You can have your, accounts shut down. You can have international transfers shut down, whatever the case may be. But if you're holding some assets in Switzerland, then you actually can, access those funds at any time. And that is actually for a lot of wealthy and ultra wealthy individuals, it's like their plan B. The same goes for citizenship and residence planning. For example, in the United States, it's been reported that there's been a 260% increase in interest in second citizenships and residencies from North Americans and South Americans as well, because they have seen that they don't want to be locked in. A lockdown is one thing, being locked in is a little bit of another thing. And these people have realized that it is very beneficial to have an alternative to just your home base and just where you're living and your banking situation there and your living situation there and so on. So that's another point that has been, added to the whole idea of global diversification, or what you can call it, international diversification of your assets. It's not only your assets anymore these days, it's also the ability to move around and so on. So here comes the next generation. We're talking about millennials or Generation Z and so on. Let's say the older investors, around 60 plus at this point in time, they stand in the next few years to transfer their wealth to the next generation. And the next generation, they are, of course, due to growing up with the internet and so on and so forth, they are more attuned to the idea of living abroad, traveling abroad, spending time abroad, spending some years abroad. For them, international wealth management is not that far away. They don't have to go to their local wealth manager. They know that they can go everywhere in the world. They can go to Asia, or they can go to London, or they can even go to Switzerland, for example. and they can have their funds managed there. So that being said, Switzerland is open to everybody. And in the past, it was difficult for an American, for example, to establish an account in Switzerland, coming off the tax evasion issues from way back when. And by now, there are many Swiss SEC registered investment advisors that have registered with the SEC specifically to be able to serve US clients. Many of them are affiliated with bigger banks like Vontobel and Pictet and UBS actually, and others are larger independent wealth managers serving US clients. Some of them also serve Canadian clients. And then you get down to like the one-man show, which can offer a very personal service. They usually don't have that many clients and that many accounts to deal with, so they can offer a real personal one-to-one, any day, every day kind of relationship. And that is can be beneficial or can be preferred by American investors, especially because they are used to being just a number with their wealth manager in the US or in Canada, for example. So the question is, why would you want to invest a portion of your assets in Switzerland? I mean, there's reporting requirements. You have to report your foreign financial account in the so-called FBAR reporting. You have to do this and you have to do that. But all those reporting requirements are very, very clear cut. It's basically just a little bit of paperwork to be filed, and otherwise you're done with that. There's not really any back and forth issues about that. So that makes it very easy in itself. And that's why in times of crisis, like we can say we have now, and maybe they will increase as time passes in the next few months or so, when they talk about third world wars and nuclear attacks and I don't know what, it just makes sense to hold a portion of one's assets in another jurisdiction. And Switzerland has been like the place to be for centuries. This doesn't just have to do with holding equities and so on. This can also do with holding physical gold or physical precious metals. It can also do with having a private placement life insurance policy in place, which basically acts as a trust, for example, where you can determine the beneficiaries without probate, etc. And in this time, it's comforting for many to know that they can organize themselves in advance before any calamities really show up on the horizon, so that when something does happen, they're actually set up properly. And that's a very important feature, I think, because so many people suffer by not being prepared, simply not being prepared. I mean, not that they're ignorant of the subject or not that they don't know what should be done, they just haven't got around to it yet. And that's where it's important that you have a resource like Americans Welcome Swiss, but you have a resource which you can find these people, which will enable you to be prepared for what is needed in the future. And children or grandchildren will be very, very grateful for that when they find out about it. A lot of times this information is not shared in advance. It's only shared after the patriarch passes away, or matriarch these days passes away. And actually it should be an open discussion beforehand. But yeah, a lot of people are hesitant to do that for some particular reason. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own preferences and so on. And I just think it's important that you're prepared for the future, that you do what you can at this point in time to mitigate risks and problems that may come, especially in the volatility that we have.
Thank you very much, Anne, for your presentation. And it was extremely insightful, and I'm quite keen to touch upon some of the key points from your presentation during the panel session, which will be quite soon.